Hello and a very warm welcome to all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to Global TV AM News live in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. I'm Muyi Agumofwegbe. In its determination to ensure that every segment of society is sufficiently catered to within the ambit of the renewed hope agenda of his administration, President Bola Tinubu has approved the appointment of Mohammed Abba Issa to serve as the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Disability Matters. Mohammed Abba Issa is a distinguished champion of persons with disabilities with over a decade of experience in local and international advocacy on matters concerning persons with disabilities. The new presidential aide is a graduate of public administration with honors from the University of Maiduguri, where he would go on to earn a master's in public administration at the same institution in 2017. First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, has charged the leadership of the armed forces of Nigeria to encourage women to join the military. The First Lady gave the charge at the one-day gender mainstreaming conference with the theme Building Capacity Through Gender Mainstreaming to Meet Security Challenges. She said globally the conduct of military operations was seen as a role reserved exclusively for men. Kikelemo Okere has details.
The Nigerian military authorities are taking steps to increase the involvement of women in male-dominated area of operations, such as combat. First Lady, Federal Republic of Nigeria, who was represented by the wife of the Vice President, urged the leadership of the armed forces to extend dialogue beyond the confinement of this conference and empower women and ranks.
Gender mainstreaming is now much more than rhetoric and a policy agenda. It is a fundamental shift in the way we perceive and address security challenges. It recognizes that security encompasses not only military strength, but also the protection of human rights, economic stability, social and environmental sustainability.
But the trend is gradually changing as women are increasingly assuming roles previously held by men. This forum, convened by the military authorities in Abuja, is meant to gather more women in the military to assume roles previously performed by men, especially in the conflict situation.
It recognizes the important role of women in prevention and resolution of conflicts, peace negotiation, peacekeeping, as well as humanitarian response in post-conflict reconstruction. Consequently, it calls for equal participation and full involvement of women in all efforts in the maintenance and promotion of peace and security.
As the security situation in the country continues to evolve, mounting pressures of the authorities, the federal government says is adopting approaches in tackling the challenges.
Security challenges. This was carefully chosen with a view to embracing holistic realities in the integration of wider gender perspective for the armed forces of Nigeria. The conference is also tailored at fashioning out the right ambience for the armed forces in designing, implementing, monitoring, and evaluating operational and administrative doctrines that seek to promote and enhance capacity by leveraging gender mainstreaming in combating the myriad of security challenges in our nation.
The notion is that when women get involved in frontline roles in conflict situations, cases of sexual and gender-based violence will either be prevented or reduced.
The profession is seen as a profession exclusively reserved for the men. So if a young girl has an ambition of becoming a military officer, she's discouraged by her parents, she's discouraged by her community. And we need to start reorientating the public to get them to realize that men and women can actually be actively engaged in the armed forces.
Besides creating balance, the increasing use of women in managing conflicts reduces the likelihood of sexual and gender-based violence, according to the UN women official. Kikelemo Okere, Global Television News.
President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, says ministries, departments, and agencies, MDAs, that fail to appear to defend their inputs in the 2024-2026 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper risk being sacked by President Bola Tinubu. Akpabio gave the warning at the opening of a 5-day public hearing on the 2024 to 2026 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper organized by the Senate Joint Committees on Finance, Appropriation, National Planning and Economic Affairs, as well as local content and foreign debts. Senator Akpabio decried alleged frivolous expenditures by MDAs, particularly government-owned enterprises. He acknowledged that in view of current realities, borrowing cannot be totally avoided, but cannot be allowed to continue unchecked.
That every head of agency invited to come and sit down and interact with the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria with a view to planning and strategizing on how this present administration can succeed. Any serious-minded appointee or any head of any agency that is interested in the success of President Tinubu's administration ought to be here. I'll be glad, Mr. Chairman, if you can give me the list of all the heads of agencies that you invited who have failed to show up in this session. This is the beginning of their failure in their various offices. Therefore, I'm happy to see the chairman of FIRS here present, and I've also seen the DG, Nimasa, and others. Outside, my minister, who himself knows the importance of what we are doing. Any head of agency that sent a representation here is not a serious person, and therefore the president must take a second look at such a person's appointment. It's not a threat, it is a truth.
According to the President of the Senate, achieving a balance to reducing budget deficits requires legislative work to look inward towards increasing revenue generation and blocking of leakages.
When we have the consolidated revenue accounts, as expected, all funds should go to a consolidated revenue account, and they ought to be appropriated for. Just bill and keep, bill and spend. Maybe a good idea. There's some government-owned agencies that are allowed by the excellent regulations, which cannot override constitutional provision to bill and spend, and then return what they like to the consolidated revenue account.
Earlier at the opening session, Chairman, Senate Committee on Finance, Senator Sani Musa, who acknowledged the complex and challenging economic situation, said 2024 to 2026 MTEF and FSP documents represent a critical roadmap that charts the economic and finance course of the country for upcoming years 2024 to 2026.
An investigative hearing on the remittance of all revenue-generating agencies of government to the consolidated revenue account of the Federation, as well as the payment of the first stamp duty, 1% stamp duty on all contracts executed in all MDAs.
Uyi Agbumofwegbe, reporting for Global Television News. Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, yesterday said privatization was not the right way to go for the country. Rather, commercialization would have been better, he said. The minister, who stated this during an interactive session with journalists in Abuja, also said government has opened investigations into the legality of the extension of the licenses of the distribution, stressing that the copy of the license with the Ministry of Power was expected to expire this December. Adelabu disclosed that an increase in electricity tariff is not immediately on the cards, as the political situation of the country demands that there must be improvement in the quality of power supply. It decried that over 90% of the electricity being generated in the country, which he puts between 50 to 90 megawatts, comes from diesel and premium motor spirit generators. He said the federal government would prioritize off-grid solutions while trying to resolve the challenges with the transmission of electricity. Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo, SAN, has appealed to labor leaders to cease disruption of aviation activities across the country. Keyamo spoke at the ongoing ministerial retreat of the ministry in Efuru, Uvie local council area of Delta State on Thursday. condemning the alleged molestation of the Nigeria Labour Congress NLC chairman Joe Ajaero. The minister advised that as much as possible, people must avoid environments that will cause such manhandling. He said the aviation was not involved in the alleged molestation of the Labour leader. In targeting aviation, he says it affects both foreigners, adding that this is a disruption to the entire country. Following the protest by workers led by President of the Nigeria Labour Congress NLC alongside the Trade Union Congress TUC Joe Ajaero in Imo State last week against the order of the National Industrial Courts, the Nigeria Union of Journalists NUJ, in a press briefing by Splendor Agbonkpolo, Executive Director of Initiative for Leadership and Economic Watch in Nigeria, has called for the suspension and investigation of Ajaero as his actions, according to him, prior to the forthcoming election in Imo State, allegedly pose grave threats to democracy. Global TV's Sharon Ajay was at the briefing and now completes the report.
Ogbokolo noted that the attitude of Ajaero in Imo State not only poses as a threat to the civil and political order in the state, but paints him as a partisan figure.
Recall that on the 2nd of November 2023, the partisan Labour leader, Comrade Ajaero, went on the Gazette expedition calling out law-abiding Imo workers for a wide protest to invoke a security breach, which means that Ajaero has missed the track and is taking the laws into his hands, and as such should be tamed to further cause pandemonium in Imo State during the elections. Let it be on record that Comrade Ajaero-led NLC have now become a political arm of the Labour Party, ready to blackmail and twist and repudiate mechanisms to disrupt the forthcoming democratic elections in Imo State.
He also urged Joe Ajaero and other Labour leaders to distinguish themselves so as not to make the public see the organized Labour as an entity with political affiliation, mainly driven by partisanship.
Also, note that Ajaero, in connivance with his shenanigans, are ready to dance the Macabre dance. Their stock in trade is to blackmail the government and score cheap political points. We hereby urge the NLC to purge herself from partisanship as a labor union, as the last resort for the common man. It is our time the union suspend Ajaero in order to restore the confidence of ordinary Nigerians who see labor unionism as a struggle for the enforcement of workers' rights and entitlements.
Sharon Ajay reporting for Global TV News.
The Nigerian Armed Forces have issued a stern warning to criminal elements intending to exploit military uniforms for nefarious activities during the forthcoming off-season elections, emphasizing their commitment to guaranteeing the secure progress of the electoral process. Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba, stated these while addressing newsmen in Abuja on the activities of the troops in their various operations across the country. Kikelamo Okere tells us more.
At the bi-weekly briefing of the activities of the troops in their theater of operations across the 6th geopolitical zone of the country, the Director of Defense Media Operations, who said the military high command has deployed personnel and equipment to ensure safe conduct of the off-season elections in Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa states, once against action detrimental to the success of the electoral process.
For the off-season elections in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi states coming up this weekend, here is a message for those that plan to disrupt the process. are aware of your plans to dress in military gear to mislead the public. Be assured of injurious consequences should you proceed with those plans. We will not allow our image to be dragged to the mud. You are hereby warned.
On the activities of the troops in the last 1 week, the director explained that several successes have been recorded, with several terrorists neutralized and some arrested and ammunition recovered, among other items.
Our operations in the last 1 week resulted in 113 neutralized terrorists, with 300 of them arrested. Troops arrested 25 perpetrators of oil theft and rescued 91 kidnapped hostages.
General Buba further stated that the crude oil products worth over millions of naira was denied oil thieves in the South-South zone.
In the South-South, troops denied the oil theft of an estimated sum of over 570 million naira. Furthermore, troops recovered 129 assorted weapons and 717 assorted ammunition.
The Director of Defense Media Operations urged the citizenry to continue to cooperate with security agencies to protect the lives and properties of residents. Kikelomo Okere, Global Television News.
The Executive Director, Resource Center for Human Rights and Civic Education, said Dr. Ibrahim Zikirullah has urged President Bola Tinubu to display statesmanship and leadership by instituting an immediate comprehensive process for reforming and cleaning up Nigeria's electoral process. Chris said gave the charge in a media briefing in Abuja to address the state of the nation. Global TV correspondent Sobra Usman was there and now tells us more.
The executive director, who was represented by the director of press, said Amsfree Ajanako, also charged the citizens of Bayelsa, Imo and Kogi State to exercise their democratic rights and vote wisely in favor of integrity, capacity and competence, and not sell their votes.
Christ urges President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to display statesmanship and leadership by instituting an immediate comprehensive process for reforming and cleaning up Nigeria's electoral process. To say the least, nominating politicians for the offices of resident electoral commissioners negates the spirit of fair play and falls short of international standards for election administration and creates the space for violent electoral conflict.
Christ said used the occasion to urge Nigerians to reject all forms of dehumanization and insist on the respect of their fundamental rights.
As we urge the citizens of Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi states to exercise their democratic right en masse on November 11, Christ urges voters to vote wisely in favor of integrity, capacity, and competence, and not sell their votes. We urge the voters to defend and safeguard their ballots by ensuring that each vote is tallied. We also demand that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, operates in a professional manner in allowing every ballot to count.
Voters are therefore urged to defend and safeguard their ballots by ensuring that each vote is tallied. Sobra Usman, Global Television News, Abuja.
Corps members have been warned against indulging in acts that can endanger their lives or put them in harm's way during their service year. The Director General of the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC, Brigadier General Yushau Ahmed, gave the warning while addressing Corps members deployed to Yobe State at the orientation camp in Dazingau, Nigeria local government area of the state, as well as their colleagues at Gombe State Orientation Camp in Amada. Brigadier General Ahmed, who urged the corps members to avoid every form of misconduct, appealed to them to be security conscious at all times. The DG implored the corps members to appreciate the cultural values of their host communities and strive to promote national unity and integration as good ambassadors of the scheme. You're watching Global TV AM News, coming to you live from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. We're on StarTimes channel 276. Kindly follow us across social media platforms using @Global TV NG and other handles now showing on your screen. When the AM News returns, Central Bank of Nigeria says old banknotes remain a legal tender. The news continues shortly with details of these and other stories right after this break. Please don't go away. This is Global Television bringing you live broadcast of the AM News from Nigeria's capital, Abuja, with Uyi Agumofwegbe. On the foreign scene, the military-installed president of Myanmar has warned that the country is in danger of breaking apart if the government cannot control fighting, which has broken out in Shan State. Former General Main Sway, who was appointed after a coup in 2021, was speaking at an emergency meeting held by the ruling military council to address a series of coordinated attacks by anti-military insurgents which have inflicted serious losses on the armed forces. 3 ethnic insurgent armies in Shan State, supported by other armed groups opposing the government, has overrun dozens of military posts and captured border crossings and roads carrying most of the overland trade with China. It is the most serious setback suffered by the junta since it seized power in February 2021. After 2.5 years of battling the armed uprising it provoked with its disastrous coup, the military is looking weak and possibly beatable. The UN's Human Rights Commissioner has accused both Israel and Hamas of war crimes. Volker Turk cited the continued holding of hostages by Hamas and what he called Israel's collective punishment of Palestinian civilians and its unlawful forcible evacuations of parts of Gaza. Meanwhile, UN Chief Antonio Guterres says the number of civilians killed in Gaza shows something is clearly wrong with Israel's military operation. Israel says 50,000 Palestinians left the Gaza City area on Wednesday after its military opened up the main road to southern Gaza for weeks. Israel has told people in the northern Gaza to head south, saying it is safer, though Hamas-run authorities reported airstrikes on Wednesday in both the north and south. Let's take a quick look at business for you. Every banknote remains a legal tender and should not be rejected by anyone, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has disclosed. This is as the Apex Bank directed all its branches across the country to continue to issue different denominations of the old and redesigned banknotes in adequate quantities to deposit money banks, DMBs. The Apex Bank stressed that every banknote it has issued remains a legal tender and should not be rejected by anyone. This disclosure was contained in a public statement issued by the Director of Corporate Communications of the bank, Issa Abdulmumin, on Wednesday in Abuja. Issa said the directive follows reports of scarcity of cash across some major cities in the country, despite initial assurances by the CBN of sufficient cash stocks in all locations across the country. Away from banking now, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, has provided insights into how the lingering conflict between Russia and Ukraine has impacted Nigerian crude oil inflows in the international oil markets, leading to a dip in demand from the once dependable Asian markets at the onset of hostilities in the Eastern Bloc. Miriamu Idris, Executive Director, Crude and Condensate, NNPC Trading Limited, said in a panel presentation at the August European Crude Conference in London that in addition to the substantial price shocks impacting commodity and energy prices globally, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine has triggered a situation where India a primary destination for Nigerian grades, increased its appetite for discounted Russian barrels to the detriment of some Nigerian volumes. And it turns out that's where we wrap it up on the news this morning. We are on StarTimes channel 276. Kindly follow us across social media platforms using Global TV, NG, and other handles now showing on your screen. I'm Muyi Agbumofwegbe, thanking you very specially for watching. Do remember that Global Morning continues right here.